I'll join along and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. Wow, I got a little heart. I didn't even do anything yet. We should just call it a day right there. I'll consider that a win, you know? Good morning, everybody. Glad they're all here, as opposed to wherever else you would be causing trouble, I'm sure. So thanks for showing up. Anyone here for the first time? What brings you here? Anybody wants to share?
Always been interested in it, living locally, but my friend Maxine encouraged us all to get together this morning.
Nice. So if a whole group of you gets up in the middle and leaves, I'll understand.
Looking for a little bit more inner peace.
Yeah. And you thought you'd find that here?
I'm trying.
Have you seen the people in this room? How peaceful do they look, you know? What else? First time, saw a few hands. Now that I've embarrassed all of you, if you don't want to share. Go ahead. First time here?
Yes.
Yeah.
We're interested and it's very beautiful.
Nice. Well, thank you. Glad you're here. Yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a funny thing, this inner peace thing, you know, because it's like, it's inner. You don't have to go anywhere. You could have technically stayed home on the couch, watched cartoons, had a big bowl of Lucky Charms cereal, and listened to birds chirp and babies yell and cars honk, and had as much inner peace there as you get here. Could have. But unfortunately, that doesn't work for most people. And so this practice is to figure out why. Why doesn't that work? Because ultimately there is no difference in here and in any other place in the world except our what? Those of you well-trained, our mind. And where is our mind with us when we're here?
Right here.
That was kind of not a good question, but yes, in theory, it's right here. And when we're everywhere else, where's our mind?
Everywhere else.
Everywhere else. So I knew the way I set this question up, it wasn't going to work. But where I was going with is that expression of wherever you go, there you are. And wherever you are, that's where your mind is. Now, we actually figure out eventually that wherever we are, that's really not where our mind is. It's everywhere else. But wherever we are, that's where we are. And with us, in theory, our mind goes with us. So the practice is to figure out, how do I cultivate, how do I find a mind that is always stable, that is always settled, that is always calm, that is triggered by nothing, triggered by no one, impacted negatively by nothing outside of us. And for those who are brand new, that doesn't mean that things don't matter. It doesn't mean that you stop caring about the disgusting things happening in the world right now and yesterday and 20 years ago and 50 years from now. Absolutely care about all of them. They matter. So you're not oblivious to what's going on in the world. You're actually working diligently to create change in the world. But that starts with gaining control of your mind and your emotions. Because that is the root cause of all of our suffering. That's what the Buddha taught. Our mind, which triggers our emotions, is the root cause of all suffering that exists. And so we practice to gain a sense of awareness over that. I don't like to use the word control because control is actually what led most people here to begin with, which is our never-ending, constant desire and attempts to control everything. So I don't like to look at the mind as something you're trying to gain control over. I like to look at the mind as something that you're trying to master and gain awareness of. Not about Buddhism, not about meditation, not about some other temple or yoga practice or country, but your mind. That is the only thing that will change your life. And so we'll practice with that a little bit. First and foremost, just to realize what an absolute mess our minds are. And then we can work from there, but it's only an hour, so we don't have that much time. All right, so I'll start with the meditation practice. To those who are joining virtually, welcome, glad you're here. As you are, feel free to say hello. There's a chat box somewhere on your screen. So a couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. Right? You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right? Are you doing it wrong? We're just going to sit, we're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. If we're lucky today at about 11:20, they'll come out to watch their dog right over there. To become common, and as much as I'd love to say something to them, I actually look forward to it just to see how it messes with people. So we'll leave that alone. But you'll hear life happening around us, and this is just what goes on. This practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you want to be comfortable. If you are in a cushion, often it helps lighten the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed, hands can be on the knees and in the lap. If you're on a bench or chair, however you're seated, also just trying to sit up straight. If you have kind of a posture you're normally in when you're tired or frustrated or just trying to go to sleep, I suggest you break that posture and sit up straight or whatever that means to you. But try to break this normal posture you're often in. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, do not expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. Starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And then eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. Expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Letting go of expectation. Letting go of judgments from the practice. Just sitting. Breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, wanting nothing but to sit and breathe. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. With the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And when ready, slowly open the eyes. Slowly beginning to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. Realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samutpatti, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's what we get. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. So all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. It's direct perception into the present moment. If your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, meditation isn't going to fix that. It's going to help you become aware of why your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess so you can then make changes in your life. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do. And learning to be kind to yourself and every single person you encounter every moment of your life. And that's why it's so easy. You just have to work on being kind to everybody. Which I know for the people in this room is so easy. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything and everyone around us, which is where we spend so much of our time hoping they do this, hoping they do that, wishing this, wishing that, why'd they do this, why'd they do that. We spend so much time focused on the actions of others. And this practice is letting go of the illusion you have of thinking you're in control of anything or anyone else, when the reality is we can't even be in control of our own thoughts and words and actions. Yet somehow we think we can control what everybody else does. And we spend a lot of time doing it. You'll spend the rest of your life completely exhausted trying to control everything and everyone else. So this practice is learning to, as I said earlier, become aware of your thoughts, your words, and your actions. That's it. So with that, I'll pause. For me, really just prefer to respond to questions. Meditation, Buddhist practice, anything that you're sitting with this morning. And we'll use the rest of our brief time this morning, and I'll respond to what's on your mind. So same to those joining virtually. Again, welcome. Glad you're here. Feel free as you are in the chat box to say hello if you have any thoughts or questions. And I'll do my best to respond to those as well. So we'll open up to questions.
I sometimes perceive a kind of false, I think it's just a false dichotomy where we have to repair or rebuild our ego versus the efforts to let go of our ego to release that. Can you talk about that?
Sure. So the question, just to repeat for those who maybe didn't hear, is this, as you say, this false dichotomy of this idea that you have to repair your ego versus build your ego, right? And, or rebuild, however you want to phrase it. Did you say build or rebuild?
Rebuild, repair, build, but also release.
Release. Sorry, thank you. Release the ego. Yeah, there's a delicate balance there in practice because, ultimately, as the Buddha taught around the teachings of non-self, right, that there is no self. Now, what that means is, well, let me tell you what it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean that you don't exist. It doesn't mean you're not here. It doesn't mean you haven't had a whole life of experiences. It doesn't mean that, if you hit your arm, that your arm's not going to hurt. We exist physically, mentally, and emotionally. But non-self, at the very just kind of scratching the surface, is beginning to understand that we exist completely differently from how we perceive ourselves to be. So the ultimate Buddhist response is, well, if there is no self, whose ego is it that you're trying to even repair? And whose ego is it that you're trying to let go of? It's not even yours to begin with. Your entire ego is based on some nonsense of a story you've been telling yourself that you think was destroyed and shattered by your whole life's experiences. And then somewhere along the way, therapy and everything else said, okay, well now let's repair and rebuild that ego that doesn't exist. Again, from a Buddhist lens. So the ego that didn't exist got shattered, and now the ego that doesn't exist, you want to repair, rebuild, and then let go of. Yeah? I hear you correctly? All right. So now I recognize that that probably doesn't help you or too many people at all, because we have spent our whole lives telling ourselves a story about ourselves and trying to make our ego feel good. And it's been shattered by trauma and life's experiences. And we don't like that. And we want to be okay with who we are. And we want to release any sort of pain and trauma that we're carrying around. So this is where I think the Buddhist teachings on the middle path are really important. To not skip over the first part of what I said, which is why I share that, because that's the Buddhist teachings. The self is an illusion. Your ego is an illusion. But we're not ready yet to really live that way. We're still stuck in it. So since we are stuck in it, let's find this balance of, okay, maybe tell yourself less stories about how miserable things in your life have been that you think has shattered and destroyed this ego and crushed it. Maybe drop some of the stories about how miserable you think experiences have been in your life. Maybe focus on, have you had wonderful things happen in your life? You ever sit around all day long and ponder those? Do you? Oh, that's good. So you and 2 other people in this room do that. Right? So the first part is to understand that ego nearly isn't as messed up as you think it is. You're just choosing to fixate on the stories that shattered the ego. There's also lots of wonderful, beautiful things that most people don't sit around and reflect on. Then going forward, understand that this repairing or rebuilding, the practice is to just be happy in this moment, which is actually a lot easier than trying to repair and rebuild everything that you think has been broken in your entire life. Because that's never going to happen. You'll spend your entire life trying to rebuild and repair stuff. You will die in therapy. And I'm not, my serious comment and joke always, I'm not trying to downplay therapy. What I always say is that half the people here are in therapy. The other half are therapists. And half of the therapists are in therapy. Therapy is important, it is critical, and please stay in it. So I'm not suggesting abandon that. It is part of your journey, part of a spiritual journey. But what I'm also saying is if we spend our entire life processing every trauma we've ever gone through, that's how we will die, is processing every trauma we've ever gone through. As opposed to saying, did you wake up today? Did you have food to eat this morning? You didn't have food? Come on now. Did you have shelter? Do you have at least one person who loves you? Your life sounds pretty damn good to me. Is there a bomb dropping on your head right now? I don't think so. How much of your ego do you really need to repair? And how much do you just need to appreciate what you have in your life? The work gets a lot easier when you find gratitude. And when you find gratitude and your ego lessens that we're so attached to, you don't have to let it go. I mean, years ago when I started this practice, I came in with this massive just ego with everything. And I early on thought, I'm going to shatter and destroy my ego. And then I realized that was ridiculous. Like I'm using my ego to think I can destroy my ego. What's more egotistical than that? So for me as a practitioner, I began to understand the ego, work with it. What are its strengths? What are its areas it needs to improve? Where is it helping me? Where is it hurting me? And just observe it, but don't feel like you're just someday going to set it all down and float away into this blah, blah, blah. Does that help? What else? Yeah.
Dependent origination. Most Saturday mornings, I'm hustling out the door, getting my kid off to swim class. I haven't eaten. I get here late. I would prefer to meditate with eyes open, soft gaze, but I get stuck in the back where my soft gaze is like on that thing. Today, I got a good night's sleep, had a huge breakfast, no swim class, got here early, sat with soft gaze on beautiful flowers. Today, quiet mind, back to the breath. When you said it was all beautiful, I was like, yeah, it is. Most days when you say it's all beautiful, I'm like,
Right.
you know.
She mouthed shut the F up for those who didn't see it.
Where in this process, in this training, because that was an example of dependent origination,
Yeah.
right? My meditation was entirely like an exercise in dependent origination.
100%.
Good day, good meditation, bad sleep, no breakfast, late, busy mind, jumping mind, irritated mind.
Totally. So, dependent origination, just to touch on it briefly for those who maybe just heard it for the first time, as I always say at the end of meditation, Pratitya Samapata, dependent origination, the basis of Buddha's awakening, is in essence what you're describing. It is the causal relationship of all phenomena. It is the absolute law of cause and effect. And it is our mind's response to every single thing that is happening in our lives. We think of triggers as like these big, heavy moments of things, but every little single thing in our lives, every moment, literally, is a trigger to something. It doesn't have to be traumatic, wonderful, terrible, but every moment is a trigger. And what you're describing, again, I'm just kind of repeating what you're saying at this point. What you're describing is your moment-to-moment triggers that are occurring during your meditation practice. And you've laid out perfectly all of the conditions you, I don't want to say need, but all of the conditions you're experiencing, desire, that are cultivating this peaceful moment. Versus all these experiences that you're not desiring, that are cultivating this not so beautiful experience. First is to intellectually. This is not easy to do. Again, this was the basis of the Buddha's awakening, so it's not like 3 weeks you're like, okay, boom, got it, done, right? I mean, this is what it's all about. It's understanding first, I think, intellectually, there is zero difference in the two scenarios that you just described. Zero. They are all things that are external to you. They are all your mind's observation, view, judgment, analysis, labeling, critique, and story that happens real quick, real fast, real quickly to each one of those things. And it starts by understanding what you've done, what we've all done in our lives, is we have created, not just with your meditation experience, that's just an example. We have all created what I refer to as boxes in our lives that if everything in that box is checked off and perfect, we are okay. And if not, then it's ruined. So understanding the story of those things, there's no difference between those two things. It goes back to, remember the game, I'm sure they still have it today for kids, but it ruined all of us, meaning it's not our fault, okay? You know the little toy that like has the little circle shaped thing, and it has shapes, and there's the square and the circle and the star, and they go in the thing, and the circle has to go in the circle to get in the middle? That ruined all of us. This is conditioned pattern and behavior because we've spent our whole lives thinking that the only way that that circle can go in that thing is if it goes in the circle. And the only way that that star can go in that thing is if it goes in the star. Well, if you break it larger, anything can go in there. If you shatter it completely, there's nothing for it to go into. If you break these up into different pieces, they will fit easily. But we're stuck thinking star with star, square with square in our entire life. So begin to see that outside of meditation as well. And intellectually understand, I must stop telling myself these are the conditions I need. Now, on one hand, one could not necessarily argue, but counter, debate, argue that you didn't tell yourself you needed those conditions that you just described for good meditation, but subconsciously in your mind, you're thinking that way. You were thinking that all the situations you described, rushing out, not eating, getting the kid dropped off, sitting in the back, the black zafu, that all those things automatically equal bad meditation. So you're from the get-go setting up yourself for nothing to happen other than just a terrible moment of, terrible is a strong word, but you know what I mean. So it's dropping the story and experiencing present time awareness, present moment. Sitting and breathing, I am here. Sitting and breathing, I have a child to drop off the swim class. Sitting and breathing, my child gets to go swim. Sitting and breathing, I didn't get to eat this morning, but I'll get to eat after. Sitting and breathing, I'm not in the sun where I want to be, but I'm in the back, but I have a seat. Sitting and breathing, I'm able to come into this space. So it's, again, coming back to anchoring ourselves, present time awareness, no comparing, no judging, no duality. So, but not easy. Yeah, thanks for sharing. What else?
I don't know if this is more of a question or a reflection, but what you're talking about makes me wonder about, because we were talking about sloth the other day as well. Makes me wonder about the sense of depression and deep sadness. How much of that is that tiredness that we're talking about when you're spending all this energy trying to wish that everybody else and everything else would be the way it was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just resonating with me, but I wonder if there's any more thoughts about kind of how that can play into that.
Sure.
It's depression.
Yeah, so the question really around depression and how that plays into just the exhaustion you're experiencing from wanting the world to be a certain way. For me, I came into this practice as a teenager in early 20s with heavy, heavy depression. I know what it was like to be 16 years old with a knife to my wrist wanting to die, right? And I had everything in the world. Spoiled, privileged, white kid from Del Cerro. Everything, but still miserable and depressed. So it has everything to do with a lot of things, not just your effort or desire or craving to want the world to be a certain way. But it's even more than that, really. I mean, for one to just say that if the world is how I want it to be, depression will go away is not the case. We have to begin to understand why is the depression, and this emotion, I always say anger, sadness, depression, stress, anxiety. So different people have different emotions that are stronger, right? For me, stress and anxiety was never my thing. It was anger and depression. So whatever emotion, maybe you don't deal with depression, but you deal with tremendous anxiety or stress or fear or worry, whatever. So all these emotions can be interchanged. But to understand emotions are only coming from one thing. And where's that? Thoughts. Whose thoughts? Yours. And who has difficulty staying present? Not a trick question. Say it out loud. Let's confess. You have difficulty staying present. And when you're not present, your mind wanders to the past and future. And in the past, you have thoughts of anger and thoughts of sadness and thoughts of depression. And as the mind wanders to the future, you have thoughts of stress and fear and anxiety and worry. Too often, you and millions of other people think that Buddhist practice is going to fix stuff. It's not. What's going to fix stuff is you. It doesn't matter if you're Christian, Catholic, Muslim, Jewish, Mormon, pagan, or lack thereof. It is your inability to train the mind to be present that is causing all of your depression. Period. Because if you're present, what are you not trying to do? Control things. So the training, and again, that's why people think, well, I'm going to do that Buddhist thing for 6 months and meditate and read a few things, and I'm going to have all this shit figured out. And there's the Einstein quote, you can't solve the world's problems with the same mind that created it. We're using these unenlightened, ignorant minds, no offense to all you enlightened, wise people, to try to think our way through Buddhist practice. Again, this is where I go to, Buddhist practice is not processing. It's not intellectually understanding stuff, even though I just asked you to intellectually understand what was going on and then drop it, right? I can always default to the Diamond Sutra and I'm good to go. But, which if you're not familiar with the Diamond Sutra, it's just a complete contradiction. So, but our inability to stay present and train the mind is the reason that we're miserable. So you can spend the next 20 years trying to figure out the answer to your question, which, like you said, wasn't really a question, more just like an understanding and exploration, or spend every day the next 20 years trying to train the mind to be in this moment. And in this moment, ego falls away, control falls away, and we just have gratitude for being here. Does that make sense? It's not easy. I get it. And that's why it's a lifelong practice. So, what else? There's a question here that says, how can we deal with a, in quotes, bad meditation? So I appreciate the question, Anthony. For me as a practitioner, I don't like to look at meditations as good or bad. Sitting and breathing is just sitting and breathing, right? If you stopped breathing during your meditation, then that might not be a good meditation, but then you wouldn't be asking about it, so you're good. But the last thing I suggest you do, your entire life is a challenge because you judge and critique everything, including, and most importantly, yourself. Right? So it leads most of us here is we spend our whole lives telling ourselves we're not good enough, we're not this enough, we're not that enough, and why can't they like me, and why can't they do this? It's just drop the story of good and bad about yourself and everything else. And at the same time, definitely don't use that same logic as I was just talking about to then judge your meditation. Sitting and breathing is just sitting and breathing. Sure, sometimes you'll have a greater ability to stay focused on the present moment, and sometimes your mind will wander more. But try not to judge that. Just be aware of what's happening. Now I'm sitting and breathing. Now I'm thinking about pizza. That's just what's going on. But don't judge yourself for your practice. Anytime you give yourself space to sit and breathe and just physically set the world down and try to mentally and emotionally set down as much as possible, that's a beautiful practice. So just, give yourself some credit for sitting and breathing.
Jeff?
Yeah.
I know you always tell us not to judge on meditation, but over time, can you start assessing, am I getting more focused or less focused?
No,
Even that is-
no, and no. Now, if somebody else asked that question, I would respond completely differently. But since it's normal, I'm not going to feed into his desire to find an excuse to judge and critique his meditation practice. I love the question about, and for those who didn't hear it, about you understand, I always say don't judge your meditation, but over time, can you start to see, and I don't think you said improvement, but the way that we may think we're getting better at it. I still think for most people, that's a really dangerous, loose, really not the right word, but it's not a beneficial practice for somebody like you. Because it is nearly impossible for some people to do something without judging it. And I understand that what one in this situation might be looking for is just a little bit of an opening to be able to see, am I getting better? That's what you really want to know. Is this shit working? Am I getting better? And what I'm telling you, do not open that floodgate. Because as soon as you open that door to ask yourself, am I getting better? You're not. You're no longer in the present moment with anything. You are now absolutely judging and critiquing the one thing that you're supposed to be doing without judging and critiquing it. So
I'm comparing with the past.
yeah, you're comparing with the past, which I get. We again going back to childhood conditioning. The shapes got to go inside the shapes. Nobody sent us to kindergarten and said, you know what, just stop when you get to second grade, right? You're good. Just go out and have fun with your life. No, second grade, third grade, junior high, high school, for those who went to college, there's always this never ending, more. And that also is a big reason why we all end up here on a Saturday morning, is trying to just be okay with who and how we are. And so we really want to try to avoid, I think, as a practice. And as I've said 1,000 times and will continue to say, where you really are going to see, I like to say benefit as opposed to better or worse from this practice, isn't actually in the meditation itself. It's your behavior outside of meditation, right? I mean, for all the time I've been doing this, I don't think my meditation is any better at all. I mean, 20 years every single day, nothing has ever happened to me. You'd think something would have happened by now. Right? I'm for a kid who always had to win and be the best and accomplish and achieve and gain. And all of a sudden, that's why Buddhism for me was so beautiful, because you can't win. There's nothing to accomplish. There's nothing to gain. There's just working tirelessly to appreciate present moment. But the meditation is just sitting and breathing. Mind wanders, try to come back to the breath. Mind wanders, try to come back to the breath. Mind wanders, try to come back to the breath. Do that for 3 minutes, do that for 3 hours, I don't care. Just try bringing the mind back to the present moment. You're going to fail at that practice your entire life. So if you have some definition of what you think meditation is, that it's supposed to be this thing, I promise you, you are going to fail. If you tell yourself, and nobody likes being a failure, right? If you tell yourself that meditation is my entire life going to be watching my mind wander and bringing it back to the present moment, watching my mind wander and bringing it back to the present moment, like the game of tug of war, if you tell yourself that that is all your meditation is going to be the rest of your life, every single time, then you're all great at it. And that's for those people that need to kind of, pat themselves on the back and say, I'm good at this stuff. I'm not a failure. I can do it. So on that note, I am going to end a little early. I ended the meditation a little bit early I have a meeting with our college group alumni at 12 o'clock, and I told all of them, do not be late. I called the meeting, I set the meeting, it's happening downstairs at 12 o'clock, and I said, do not be late. So I have 7 minutes to wrap this up, grab this computer and that camera, walk out of here, and then leave you all like I normally do, but I'm just gonna run out first. So we're all gonna join palms, do a transfer of merit. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to Jackie Hyder during her time of rebirth and her family and friend who suffer at this time. And to Chuck during his time of suffering. So quick announcement before I run. Thanks all for being here. I'm Jeff. I'm a Dharma Bum. We opened up this temple 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead are not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students, we're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. So every night we have different practices going on, different people leading different Buddhist traditions. So everything we do is free. We do a food distribution program every Thursday, 5 o'clock. If you think your life sucks, prepare sandwiches, feed people sleep on the street every night, and it'll put things in perspective. So other than that, I appreciate you being here. As you know, there's always stuff to help around here.